going to cover in this session is what I've shown you there, and that is then basically how you get started. And getting started is all about doing sufficient background reading, making sure that you've got the right the right topic set up, and then there's three big things that your proposal needs to deal with. Three big questions that your proposal needs to answer. And when we go into high level academic study, it's very easy. You're doing law, you're doing medicine, you're doing engineering. You get into the detail of it, and you're passionate about it, and this is what you want to do, and you're hoping it's going to drive career prospects, and that's absolutely fantastic. But you always need to be able to step back and say, somebody coming into this, can I describe to them in my proposal what I'm going to do? And then the second big question and objective that you need to achieve with the proposal is, why are you going to do it? And then how? And we're going to deal with all of those. So the question that came up just now, was in terms of being too broad and then too narrow. And the other thing that we'll touch on in the session, and I will show you in a lot more detail in the course that you can enroll in for free through the link that I'll give you just now, is a thesis statement, how to construct a good thesis statement. And when you construct that good thesis statement, that's like your North Star. And that protects the scope, if you like, of your study. And I think the only, if you've got those principles and practices right, you just then have to decide in your own mind what goes into that thesis statement. And as long as it's something that's going to keep you engaged for the period of your research, it's very important to protect the boundaries of that thesis statement. Because as you say, if it's too narrow, the significance to your field is going to be limited. But if it's too broad, you're going to struggle to actually finish. So there's always that toss-up between the two aspects of, how broad and how wide you want to make your topic. So those are all very good points, just by way of introduction, that we need to think about as we get into this important topic of proposals this afternoon. Okay, so guys, let's start then. And so we've gone through the three questions, and I think now let's just then drill down into that a little bit. And what you'll get in the course as well is a whiteboard lesson, which I've just taken a screen grab of there, highlighting, as I've mentioned, the what, the why, and the how. And this really, for me, is the most important thing for you to think about in terms of constantly assessing your proposal and the actual document, and then when you do a presentation, and how you deal with the questions that you'll get in your presentation if you do want the proposal, and also as you go through your study and you get pulled in different directions and you have limitations that's creeping up. Are you able to go back to that simple three levels of what you're doing, why you're doing it, and how you're doing it? Okay, and just a reminder, I will start popping a couple of links on the chat so that you can get into all the value that's available through the Student Success Coach. Versatile says, before I dropped out last year, I had a challenge grasping the difference between methods and methodology. Okay, good question. We're going to get to that in the how section. So in the how section, we talk about methodology, because how you do something in an academic research sense is going to be through a set of academic methods. You're going to use certain instruments. You need to position yourself philosophically, and then you're going to go into your field, and you're going to obviously work according to some sort of plan. But the academic activities that you take and steps and sequences that you take are going to be driven by methods and methodology. But to answer your question right off the bat, I would say, you get a broader sort of overall methodology. If I could think of an example, in my PhD, I use grounded theory. You might have something like case study or mixed methods, etc. And then within there, you might sort of have individual methods. I think it's just a difference between the level at which you're operating and thinking about how you're going to do your research. Okay, so let's get into then the what. So, very importantly, you need to be able to explain, what you're doing in your research. I was interviewing somebody, on the podcast recently, which, by the way, is live on Spotify and a couple of other platforms. So hop on there, and you'll, listen to some inspiring student success stories every week. In fact, we had a fantastic interview with Prof. Ivan Hofsire, who is the postgraduate coordinator at Wits Engineering faculty. That went live on Wednesday. I'll dig out that link and send it to you, because it's really a masterclass from a lecturer's perspective about postgraduate studies, and the insights that you get in that interview, I think, will be incredibly important for you. But this other lady that I interviewed on the podcast, I asked her, she had just actually got a distinction, I think, for a master's. And I asked her, at the early stages, what she felt she did well. And one of the things she said was to do lots of background reading. So, those of you that have just sort of registered, or you've got your proposal, due in a few months, you've still got time to keep doing lots of reading. And this is probably what's motivated you to get into further studies. And we're living in a time of disruption and COVID, and I still passionately believe that it is good, rigorous academic research that is going to help solve the world's problems. And so, immersing yourself in your field, going down different lines of inquiry. And one of the actions that I, encourage people to take in the course is to get yourself a notebook, write some questions, and be intentional about, reading other research, other studies, blog articles, news articles, even contemporary sources. Just remember that, things like Wikipedia and newspapers and articles, etc., those are all secondary research. You've got to go back to the primary research to make sure that you get the original first-hand study and research that was done. And whether you're, jotting, notes from all of this down in a physical or digital notebook absolutely doesn't matter. I give you a couple of tips and tricks, from my own experience. And they all work, exceptionally well. And all of that really then starts to inform what you're doing in your research. And then there are a couple of things, I'm not going to go through all of them in the course. I'll actually walk you through, my proposal, and then you'll see in detail, the different sections, and I'll allude to some of them here. And please do mention in the chat if there are any specifics that come up with regards to the specific topic around, what it is that you're studying. Chapisho says he's in the process of applying for a fellowship, and part of the application process includes submitting a 2-page research proposal, including a reference. I'm struggling to fit everything into 2 pages. Well, Chapisho, I would, if you've just got 2 pages, if you haven't been given a template, those 2 pages, you should divide it up into 3 sections, just like I've got on the flip chart there. On the previous slide, what are you doing, why are you doing it, and how you're doing it. And you are going to struggle if you've got a lot of references to add it in there. But with 2 pages, you just have to keep kind of focused on these 3 big areas of work that you're going to have to do for your proposal.